Have you ever wondered what happens when a language becomes a child of divorce? So I'm currently in Galicia, an autonomous region of Spain where people speak the Galician language, Galego. Galician, much like Spanish and Portuguese, is a Romance language descended from Latin. In fact, Galician and Portuguese come from a common ancestor known as Galician Portuguese, which was spoken in this area sometime around the 9th to 14th centuries. However, in the 12th century, this speaker population got split in two, with the south becoming the independent Kingdom of Portugal and the north becoming the Kingdom of Galicia, which got absorbed into the broader Spanish state. In Portugal, this allowed early Portuguese to evolve on its own from Galician Portuguese and diverge, particularly in its phonology. It also allowed for Portuguese to develop its own literature and writing standards. In Galicia, however, the opposite happened. Galician came under increasing influence from Castilian Spanish, ceasing to be used as an official written language by the 1500s. The use of Spanish also had an effect on the way the language evolved, particularly in its pronunciation. Galician developed European Spanish's iconic labiodental fricative f in place of s, yielding rapaz instead of rapaz, as in Brazilian Portuguese. Some aspects of Galician grammar were also influenced by Spanish, such as the heavier use of clitic pronouns, you know, that extra me that you see at the start of me gusta. However, on the whole, Galician is unmistakably much closer to Portuguese than it is to Spanish, as can be seen through its vocabulary using xeitu and rua instead of manera and calle, and also in its grammar maintaining the future subjunctive form which Portuguese has and Spanish has lost. And it's actually here, in the similarities to Spanish and Portuguese, that I find Galician the most interesting. It's important to remember here that in many ways language is political. Galician, as a minority language surrounded by two larger, more powerful sister languages, has to decide on which one she'd like to align herself more with. This can be seen particularly in the way people choose to write the language. The Royal Galician Academy in the 1980s chose to align the language more with Spanish, choosing Spanish's double L and ñ to write the sounds y and ñ instead of Portuguese's LH and NH. This was, however, controversial, as Spain has historically suppressed and even in some cases banned the language from being spoken. In response to this, a movement called reintegracionismo arose. It looked to use the Portuguese orthography to write Galician in order to reintegrate the two, because if you remember at the start of this video, they were once the same language with a shared literary standard. In 2003, this resulted in the Academy revising the orthography to include letters from medieval Galician Portuguese, such as using NH to represent ñ and X to represent sh. This more moderate approach was decided instead of fully using the Portuguese orthography, because even that was controversial, as some thought that using the Portuguese orthography would label Galician as a dialect of Portuguese rather than a language in its own right, which the Academy and the people also didn't want. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's deep dive into this fascinating language. Gracias por ver!